Good evening, everyone. My name is Grant. I'm your host for this evening's webinar, and I'm so delighted to have Karen Reagor as our presenter this evening. Having done a practice session with Karen just the other day, you're in for a real treat tonight. And Karen, I'm going to ask a distracting leading question. How's the weather in Covington, Kentucky?
Right now it is very pleasant. Rainy morning, but it's a nice 72 degrees, so I can't complain.
Excellent. And I'm delighted because last night I think one or two of you who are participants on this evening's webinar may recall when you webinar last night that we didn't have any of the same technical difficulties you and I had, Karen, in the last half hour, but about 10 minutes before the webinar was to begin, our presenter lost power due to a kind of a wild storm outside of his St. Louis area home, and then got the power back but lost internet connectivity. Tried repeatedly to get back on, and then eventually he just decided, it told me he'd better just take his laptop and drive 20 minutes to work. So he drove through a lightning storm to get to work. And very comically, but as cool as a cucumber, he delivered his presentation. His name is Bob Coulter, by the way, and did a wonderful job. Very humorously, he 3 times was interrupted by weather alarms that were going off in his nature center that he had to physically get up and turn off each time. So it was quite a chaotic, in the background, it was a chaotic situation. Started late. Everything went very, very well, but I'm just so glad that in a calm part of the continent this evening. So, anyway, yes. Without further ado, and sorry for my tangent, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you who have joined this evening's webinar. As I said, you're in for a treat. Let me give you, before I introduce Karen, let me give you a quick sense of where we're going for the next hour. Karen will speak for 25 to 30 minutes, after which you'll have an opportunity to address your questions formally to her. But you don't actually have to wait to ask questions of Karen or myself if you're having technical difficulties, or of each other. And the place to do that is in the chat box, and you may already see that we've had conversations there already, and that's the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And in the extreme bottom left-hand corner, it says main room, and beside that, it says there's an empty space. If you type a question or a comment into that empty space and then hit enter, it will pop up in the chat box above. And just as Karen has typed a greeting there in the last moment. And Barbary has done the same, and she's referring to the National Council of Geographic Educators who are co-sponsoring this webinar, and thank you, Barbary, for all your work in making that happen. So at the end of our 60 minutes, I'm going to ask your indulgence to fill out a very short survey, getting your feedback for this evening's webinar, and all that do will be eligible to win one of 2 free one-year digital subscriptions to Green Teacher. And if you're not familiar, let me just say a word. Green Teacher is a 20-year-old environmental education magazine for educators, youth educators, both working inside and outside schools. In the last 10 years, we've had the pleasure of publishing the books that are shown in front of you and on the screen at the moment. And if you're not familiar with our magazine, which will be on the slide there, Karen, I would certainly encourage you to check us out at greenteacher.com. And if you're not yet a subscriber, please do consider taking out a subscription, purchasing a book. As a result, you'll enable us to continue doing these webinars for free. So, as you've heard from the automated gong a few minutes ago, the presentation is being archived. Anyone can freely view it for the next 30 days rather. If you're a subscriber, you can freely view all of the archived, I think now 26 webinars at any time, and please encourage your friends to sign up so they can do the same. Now, Karen Reagor, let me tell you her official title. She currently serves as the Southeast Regional Coordinator for the National Energy Education Project, otherwise known as NEED. She's also the State Director for the Kentucky program. She began her career as a classroom teacher in East Tennessee, has been an active member of the Tennessee and Kentucky Associations for Environmental Ed. She served as the Kentucky Association's first executive director. She was a Green Teacher editor for several years, and in 1995 she began working with NEED, doing professional development workshops for teachers and leadership development opportunities for students, both in Kentucky and beyond. Karen is a force of nature, but a gentle one, and one of those amazing environmental educators, one of those huge leaders who has a quiet presence, but a strong presence throughout the United States. And I'm just so delighted that she's been willing to present the webinar this evening.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that very much.
Over to you, Karen. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone. It's a pleasure to be with all of you this evening, this good morning, this afternoon, wherever you might be on our planet. I would like to encourage you to sign in the main room box that Tim was speaking of. Let us know who you are and where you are and what your particular interest or experience has been with students and energy conservation. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you the successes that we've been having here in Kentucky and want to learn from all of you. So we're looking forward to your questions and comments as we go through the presentation, and then at the end, hopefully we'll have a very lively conversation. So I wanted to start out this evening just giving you a little bit of background about the organization that I do work for. We, like Green Teacher, we are a nonprofit education association. We've been active here in the United States for 32 years. We have just recently gone international. The countries of Thailand and Taiwan have selected our materials for use with their students, which shows you that energy is energy no matter where you are in the world. I have been facilitating the program here in Kentucky for the last 16 years. And just in the last 2 or 3 years, we've just really begun our focus on engaging students, helping them to apply what they're learning in the science classroom to real-world applications, looking at the energy use in their school buildings. One of the things that we're really excited about is a new piece that's just been released by the U.S. Department of Energy on energy literacy. We've been hearing a lot about environmental literacy. We now have energy literacy standards. So you'll see here the 7 principles. This document is downloadable from the DOE website, so if you'd like more information, be sure to take a look at that. I think it's very, very beneficial to see how we as creatures on this planet can learn from this document. The NEED project, as I mentioned, has been around for 32 years. Our mission is to engage folks in all networks, students, teachers, government, business leaders, to design and deliver multi-sided objective energy education programs. As I mentioned earlier, we're active across the U.S., hosting workshops for teachers and students, and we'll do this on an annual basis. Our program is foundational information starting with steps 1 through 4. We really want the students to understand what energy is, the forms of energy, energy transformations. Then in step 2, we begin looking at the sources of energy, those natural resources that we use to provide the energy we use on a daily basis. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each of those resources, looking at renewables and non-renewables. In step 3, we move into electricity and magnetism, helping students understand where their electricity is coming from, what natural resources are producing that electricity, and how does it actually get from the power plant to their school or their home. And then in step 4, we move into transportation, both for personal transportation, for mass transit, for all kinds of fuel opportunities. We just facilitated last week here in Kentucky 2 workshops that focused on our hybrid electric school bus fleet. Kentucky, I'm very proud to say, has the largest hybrid electric school bus fleet in the nation with over 170 buses that we're collecting data on. And our program wrote curriculum for the students to use that data to analyze and see really the geography, how the geography of Kentucky plays a role in the efficiency of these school buses. So that was an exciting new project we were a part of. And then, as I mentioned, step 5 is where we get into energy efficiency and conservation and help the students apply what they've learned in the science classroom. We want the students to understand that efficiency and conservation is more than just about saving money. It's reducing their school's carbon footprint, and it's helping them to be able to make wise, educated energy decisions. For those of you that are familiar with efficiency and conservation, we know that the students, Tim, I'm having trouble, the slide's not moving.
Try going backwards for a moment and see if that works. And if
helps at all.
Yeah, you've just moved the slide. That's good. Now try going forward.
More technical difficulties. I'm going to keep talking, and I'm going to keep playing with it. Or you can...
Yeah, or else I can. If you're not able to advance it, I can. It tends to it may cause some other problems, but we'll take that risk if you can't move forward.
Okay. Yeah, it's not. It's not doing anything.
So you're trying to get to number 11 at the moment.
Number 9.
You're on number 9 right now.
Okay.
I'm seeing the one that says some benefits of energy conservation and efficiency.
Really? That's not what I'm seeing on my screen. That is bizarre. Okay, so you're seeing the right thing, and I'm not. I'll go ahead then. Some of the, you'll see there on your screen, not only are there benefits for students, but benefits for the schools as well by engaging the students, because a lot of our school buildings, we have good maintenance and custodial staff that will keep the buildings running efficiently, but oftentimes there's a missing link not addressing the behaviors of those that are using the building. So this is where we want to provide an opportunity not only to increase the efficiency in the building, but also to get the students engaged in that process. And this can be a very rewarding experience for the students, and oftentimes it's students who are not already engaged or haven't found a place to connect. It's an opportunity for them to impact change in their school and their community and really provide an awareness and education for those around them. Where to begin? Tim, can you advance these because I'm not seeing anything. I'm stuck on slide number 8.
Okay, yeah, you're actually advancing them fine, but obviously you need to see them yourself. So why don't I do that?
Yeah.
They are advancing correctly. It's just but that's obviously you need to see them. You're right. So let me see if I can get us a click on number 11, which hopefully and let's see if that. I'm going to actually click on number 10, and then I'm going to go to number 11, and so that you can actually hopefully, and you can tell me whether you can see things working or not.
Okay. Yes. Excellent.
So did you? Okay, good.
Yeah,
so you're just
there
going
now. All right.
So what you're going so from now on, just say click, and I will advance it for you.
We apologize, everyone. And Tim, you may have jinxed me. I now hear rumbling in the background, and that storm from St. Louis may be arriving in my backyard now. So we'll see.
Oh, Karen, don't say that.
So one of the things that we, when we began talking to folks about how to get the students engaged, there was enthusiasm in the process or in the idea of getting students engaged, but really, how do we make that happen? So we piloted a program for 2 years here in Northern Kentucky with one of our districts and came up with this blueprint for student energy teams where it really is a step-by-step on helping folks learn and actually methodology for how to establish their student energy teams. So we followed with some research. We're very strong supporters of Energy Star, and I know Energy Star is part of the Canadian network as well. You're very familiar with it. And there may be some similar organizations in other countries that you can use as a reference, but we found this to be a very comprehensive way to approach energy efficiency, and there would be some consistency. So we designed our guide for school energy teams around this same 7-step approach. So in step number 1, making that commitment, we found that we had teachers who were excited about doing energy efficiency and conservation with students, but if they didn't have the support of their district, oftentimes opportunities were missed, or the administrative support just wasn't there. So we work with the counties, the districts, to help them establish an energy policy. It could be something just as simple as energy awareness is important to us. We're not looking for anything that's complicated or real deep, but just the idea that the districts do believe that energy efficiency and energy education is important, and then we build from there. So with the Student Energy Team Guide, we've worked with 4 specific districts who've taken this model, this template, the blueprint, and have tweaked those different components and have come up with their own names for their own program. The race car that you see here, this is from our Bowling Green area where the Corvettes are designed and built. So their team is called the Race Team, and it's Respect and Conserve Energy, as you can see there. And the Energy Wise, too. Several of our groups have discovered, as we like the students to see, that energy and environment are very interconnected. So several of these, it's not just energy teams, but it's energy and environment. So when looking at the team, of course, having that administrative support within the building itself is very, very important. The team, we've got to have an advisor. And one thing that we've discovered, it's not always the science teacher. Some of our most successful teams, one elementary school, it was the 2nd grade reading teacher who just was passionate about environmental issues. We have a team of another elementary school where it's the PE teacher. So oftentimes we tend to think it has to be the science teacher, but we have found that that's not always the case. We also feel it's very, very important to engage the building support staff. We want our energy efficiency program to be a very positive experience for everyone. We want the custodial and maintenance staff to know that we're on a team together working for a common goal. So we want to engage them and have them be part of the team working with the students as well. And then we found that when recruiting our students, typically energy is not a topic they've thought about, but the environment is one they do think about. So oftentimes we can engage them through that process. And we've also found that the team members tend to be those that are not already overly committed. We want them to be able to spend some time in the school because there are activities that we do before and after school when we're doing our monitoring. So there are steps that we want to take in that process. We have found that usually the first year of the team, until the students and teachers really understand what this is all about, we're lucky if we get maybe a handful of students, but once this idea catches on and the excitement throughout the building, many of our schools have had to actually go to an application process to keep the team manageable. And the thing we like to stress here is that you have the team who's going to facilitate the project, but it takes the participation of all teachers and all students in the building to make the plan work. So while you've got that team of students who are the leaders, they're going to be working with all students and teachers in the building. There are many opportunities to make sure that our students have the information they need to be effective in their roles. We can, as I mentioned earlier, have the facilities managers come in, or if your district happens to have an actual energy manager, that's even better. A lot of our utility companies here in Kentucky will come in and speak to the students and talk about the electricity and the different aspects of that. There are also some web resources that I've noted here. Again, the Energy Information Administration. The kids' web page is full of resources for the students, and then, of course, Energy Star. And one thing that's interesting about our website is that all of the curriculum materials that we produce are available free of charge for download from our website. So everything that we have, anybody anywhere that has an internet connection can download those resources and use them. NEED also provides professional development, which we would encourage anyone to take advantage of. We do have one-day educator workshops that we host all over the country. On our website is the calendar that lists all of these workshops. For the teachers that are listening, the workshops, we actually provide the substitute reimbursement. So your principals can't use that excuse for not letting you come to a workshop. Teachers also will receive resources, and at many of our workshops, they actually receive one of our hands-on kits. So that's an opportunity. We also have a 5-day energy conference for educators held in July each year. We move these around the country. And I mentioned earlier in the presentation about the teachers from the countries of Thailand and Taiwan. We've actually had international teachers come to our conference. So this is not limited just to those in the United States. It is open to anyone who's interested in learning more about what we have to offer and how to engage students. And then we also present at all the NSTA and many of the state conferences. And if any of you are coming to Louisville next month, we welcome you and hope you'll stop by our NEED booth and say hello. In our step 2, the students begin to assess the current status because we can't measure change if we don't have a baseline to work from. So with the tools in our monitoring and mentoring kit, you see there's a kilowatt meter to use for the plug load study. There's a light meter for them to check the light output in all of the spaces in the building. We find that in many of our schools, spaces are overlit. The little tool that you see there in the bottom right-hand corner of the tools, that's a flicker checker, and it checks for old magnetic ballasts or new electronic ballasts. There is also a hygrometer pin that they're going to be checking for relative humidity. And much of the assessment that they're going to be doing impacts not only energy use, but also indoor air quality. So we're looking at a lot of different environmental factors that could have an impact on the students. So the students are going to collect data, they're going to analyze this data, and then they're going to make recommendations for how they can improve the efficiency of their build by educating others. So here are some more of the tools that we have. I mentioned plug load studies. The students can determine exactly what it costs to run their classroom. What are they wasting, not only in dollars and cents, but in natural resources if we leave things running unnecessarily. And then there are the energy management guide and the student survey. One of the things that we were very lucky to have was a partnership where we had several organizations working together to impact energy savings. And 2 of the organizations were providing technical assistance, and the NEED, along with our Kentucky Green and Healthy Schools program, we were the connection for the teachers and students. And I know there are other states across the country that have similar green schools programs, so I encourage you to look at those if your state doesn't already have one. It's a great place to find some ideas on how you might get one going in your particular state. It's a great connection for the students. Once the students have analyzed that data, we're going to establish some goals, brainstorm ideas to reach the goals. It's important that they have a master plan, but also then to have a timeline. Sometimes some of the goals will be short-term, some will be long-term goals. And one of the things that our students have come up with is a way to promote the program and then encourage others to participate. The 2 door hangers that you see there, these are tools that one of our districts uses when the students are doing their what we call secret or silent walkthroughs. They'll check classrooms that are empty to see that the lights are off and windows are closed, doors are closed, things of that sort. And then they'll put the door hanger that congratulations, everything's perfect, or you're getting there, but you have a few things you need to work on. Again, positive reinforcement. And then the checklist that you see on the right, this is a piece that these are the primary pieces that every classroom should be following. So the students printed this document on bright yellow paper. They laminated it, and it's hanging on the door just as you exit the classroom, just by the emergency exit, so that anybody who's in that classroom will know that these are the things that are expected before you leave. To make sure that everyone understands, we encourage the students on the energy team to have an awareness campaign that includes the entire student body and all the teachers. So this is the place. They have their big launch. Here in the U.S., October is Energy Awareness Month. So many of our teams will prep in August and September, and then they'll have their big school assembly in October to announce their goals for the current year. So it's a great way for everyone to get engaged and excited. We have skits and plays that teach about energy. We have energy rock performances, all kinds of entertaining pieces that the students can engage in to share their message. We've been very lucky for the past 2 years to have a partner with the Vending Miser project, and this is a device that will cycle the compressor on a cold drink machine. And many of our schools here in Kentucky have cold drink machines that they think they're making money on. Well, with the Vending Miser project, the students did plug load studies, and we have the average of their data is showing that with a Vending Miser, they can save 47%, up to 47% in energy use. So this is a great way for the students to collect data, show the impact of their data, and then make recommendations for future savings. We also have been participants in the Change the World mini grants over the past few years, where students actually applied for mini grants where they could do some kind of a community event. The picture you see here is a group of our fifth graders who did a community event at a local hardware store. And oftentimes consumers hear about the value of a CFL or that we should be using them, but they don't understand the math behind the efficiency looking at energy consumption. So the students here were actually going through the math to show this customer the value of using a CFL. Not only do they do the math to show the efficiency, but they also talk about proper disposal of the CFLs and address any questions about the mercury content of the CFL. So we make sure that the students have all the information they need to be able to be educated resources for the community. So I mentioned some of the other programs. Energy Star has also a program that they do with PTAs and PTOs called Go Green Nights, and they are currently having a campaign for students where they can actually put videos on their site. One of the things that the students need to understand that their monitoring of the building is ongoing. They'll do periodic full building monitoring, but we've also found that there can be great savings looking at shutdowns for special fall break, spring break, winter break, especially in the summer. A lot of those plug loads that aren't necessary to be left plugged in over time. The students can actually be extra eyes and hands for the custodial staff to make sure the teachers are following the shutdown expectations. And then, of course, outreach for the students. Once they get engaged in their schools, we've had students who have made presentations to community and civic groups. We have students that are working with their local churches. There's just all kinds of opportunities for them to spread the word even further than just their classrooms. And then in step 6, evaluating their progress, to really step back and think about what have they accomplished reaching their goals, what goals were exceeded, what were some of the obstacles that they ran into, but we really want them to step back and think about what it is that they've done. And once they've completed their projects for the year, we want them to not only be recognized for what they've done, but to be able to acknowledge the success of all of the other students and teachers in the building. So NEED does provide an opportunity at both the state and national level for recognition. With our Kentucky Green and Healthy Schools, they provide recognition as well, as does Energy Star. So if your particular student energy team signs on as an Energy Star partner, there are opportunities there for the students to be recognized for what they've done. I mentioned our Youth Awards program. There is a reporting form that the students should complete, and I actually use this with my students as a planning document for them to get their thoughts together about exactly what did they want to do, what were they going to teach. And then they submit this as a portfolio of their accomplishments, and the portfolios are due on April 15th of every year. And then in June, we have a national conference. And last summer, June, we had over 750 teachers and students from across the United States who gathered in Washington, D.C. for 4 days to share and learn from each other and to see our nation's capital. So it is an opportunity, and you'll see the dates here for the 2013 event. I've listed our website again here for you to take a look at, and then also my email address. If you have any questions after the presentation, I'd be glad to answer those questions, and I look forward to hearing what the rest of you have done and how we can all work together and make the getting our students engaged bigger and better than what we already have. So thank you very much for participating tonight, and Tim, I'll turn it back to you.
Karen, and by the way, you just did a match. Just as soon as you told me you were having trouble advancing slides, you regained the capacity to do so. That was great.
I took over control again.
That was good, just as you should. And if you could just advance us one more slide.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen, and thanks for a great presentation. You know, I was thinking about it as you were going through the presentation that, you know, regardless, many of the folks on this webinar and those listening to over the next several weeks, the archive version, you know, work in energy education, some in small groups, some in large, many within the U.S., but many outside of the United States, in Canada and beyond. And what I like because of the resources and the focused work that you and your colleagues have done, you've really developed, you know, a kind of complete package. I really like all the youth awards, the work that the various handouts that you've developed to alert teachers in schools who may need a bit of reminding to turn off lights and computers. I mean, you've really thought through the whole process, and you've really got a wonderful package of resources for teachers to use. And to me, it's from where I sit and look at all of this, it's a wonderful set of resources. It's a real model kind of program for people to make use of wherever they are. So without further ado, though, and I probably should have saved that little comment until I'd introduced this particular slide here, but as you can see, it's pretty straightforward for those of you who participated in previous webinars. What I'll do is to if you have questions for Karen, start with the first one and type it into that blank box on the screen and hit the button Submit. That will restore a blank screen for you. And if you have more questions, you can type them in and hit Submit once again. I'm going to retrieve those questions and verbally pass them on to Karen one at a time. And we have a reasonable sized group here tonight. I'm sure we're going to get through all of the questions, so be patient if yours isn't asked right away. But I'm going to start with one that's already that Liz posted in the chat box. Karen, you may be able to see it. She's saying that she went to the website, the NEED website, looking for where the handouts were, but couldn't find a link.
Okay.
Can you speak to that?
Yes. When you go to the website, you'll see a tab for educators, and the educators tab is where all of the curriculum materials are listed, and they are cataloged either by title or by grade level or by subject area. So when I mentioned the steps earlier, those are the subject areas we talk about. Step 1 being science of energy, 2 forms of energy, etc. Step 5 is going to be where you're going to find all of our energy efficiency and conservation pieces. If you happen to be a primary level teacher, you could go to the primary section looking under grade levels. Primary, elementary, intermediate, and secondary are our grade level designations. And then if you have a particular title you're looking for, they are also listed in alpha order. But that's under the educator tab.
Thanks, Karen. And I should have mentioned also that tomorrow we will send everyone the URL for NEED, Karen's email that she had on the screen moments ago, and any other kind of resources that get referred to or any of you raised that others should know about. We're going to send out a follow-up email to the, I think, more than 100 people who registered for this session, so that they know that A, that the archive version is available, but B, they will have, as will you, the contact information that Karen had on the screen moments ago, and if people are having any trouble finding some of these things, we'll provide a little more detail replicating what Karen just mentioned. Okay, so please continue to type your questions. I've already seen one, picked up one in the back office. Let me just review it and so I can relay it to Karen. Yes, the question that's being asked, Karen, is that as kids are doing the energy audit of their school or their classroom or buildings in the community, they obviously will come across opportunities for energy savings that they themselves cannot implement. And how do you encourage kids to deal with that? You know, kind of retrofit projects that they can't themselves do.
Exactly. One of the things that that is one of the reasons we want to be sure that we engage the students with the facilities and maintenance staff, because they will learn from those professionals about those opportunities. But one of the ways we do engage them, for example, when I was talking about the flicker checker earlier, we have a lot of older buildings here in Kentucky that may have gone through different phases of renovation. So when the students are doing their walkthrough, and we're very, I don't know if I want to use the word careful or sensitive, because we have groups here in Kentucky who are doing professional audits, we call what our students are doing assessments, because they are not doing the professional engineering audits. So with the student assessments, using that flicker checker, when they go around the building, when they find areas that have the old magnetic ballasts, a retrofit is not something they can do, but it is something they can recommend. So by using that data, then they can connect to those who can apply for and actually do the retrofit. Now, we have had some students in our career and tech ed groups who have actually done a retrofit of their buildings with the lighting as part of their classroom activities. But typically the students will do the assessment, and then when they find something that needs to be corrected that they cannot physically do, then they connect to the professionals in their districts that can do that. And another thing that we like to do in that area is that we encourage them to go to their local utilities website to look at commercial rebate programs. So in the case of lighting retrofits, many of our utilities will pay towards the purchase of additional vending misers. The students have not only identified an issue, but one of the first questions the district's going to ask, it sounds great, but how are we going to pay for it? When the students say, well, we've been to the website, our local utility will provide rebates for the program, it shows that the students have done their homework to not only identify an issue, but have actually come up with a way to help cover the cost.
Fantastic. Thanks, Karen. Another question, a good one too, and apropos to my comments about the thoroughness of the NEED program. One person's asking a thoughtful question. In contrast, she's saying, you know, reminding us that, of course, kids love the fun stuff, and lots of kids aren't patient enough to listen to lots of science lectures and all the preparatory work. They want to go out and do the fun stuff now. And she was just saying, given you presented to us this evening a wonderful sequence of steps to go through, many of which need to be done before kids grab the clipboards and do the fun stuff, the assessment as you described it. Have you experimented with doing the sequence a little differently, or even omitting some of the steps in order to help distracted kids get to the fun steps, and perhaps using that as a springboard to going back and doing some of the core work that they need to do to become more familiar with energy creation in general?
Yeah, the engagement of the students can come from a lot of different perspectives. The idea behind the blueprint is it's a guide. And for someone who's wanting to engage the students, you can come into the process wherever. There is no cookie-cutter program, and that's what we start out with the districts. This is not designed to be you have to do this, 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 in this order to be effective. The idea is that you have an overall idea of what typically needs to happen to have a successful program, but you may get the kids engaged and they're already fired up about some particular aspect of energy efficiency, and then you work backwards to say, okay, now we've got this great idea. How are we going to facilitate and make sure that it sticks and that we have a bigger impact? So the idea behind the blueprint is that it is a guide. And however it works for your district, it's for many schools, and it's a place to start. We want to do something, but we don't know how to begin. So it is not designed to be a cookie cutter program, but one that can be adapted and modeled that what fits best for each situation.
Great, thanks, Karen. And can you another question? Can you talk a little bit about field trips that might be good complements to this sort of in-school, in-class presentations? And the questioner is anticipating that it'll all depend a lot on what sort of energy production or distribution facilities are in a particular school. But any thoughts on that?
Unfortunately, since 9/11, a lot of the opportunities are not available to students like they used to be. That, along with the cost of transportation, a lot of our schools are not able to. But when the opportunity arises, a trip to a coal-fired or a hydropower plant or a nuclear plant, a lot of our plants will have information centers, so at least the students can get an idea. I know here in Kentucky we have, I think we're up to 7 now. We have 7 landfills that are capturing methane gas to produce electricity, and they have visitor centers where you can bring your and it's not just for school groups. Families can come and visit. We also find that oftentimes students get connected to energy through recycling, and there are great advantages to connecting energy and recycling, because by recycling we do save energy, and that is an opportunity as well. And to visit a local recycling center, I know I was with a group of teachers last week in rural eastern Kentucky, and they don't have curbside recycling, and they are lucky if they have one recycling center. So they were talking about their students starting to investigate, why don't we, what can we do, how can we create an interest so that there is something that is provided. So it's basically looking around the community. There may be some industries or companies around who are energy and environmental aware, and it's part of their mission. We have Toyota here in Kentucky, and they are big on low energy use and zero waste. So that is another opportunity to show how in the community industry is interested in looking at this as well. So we try to connect, and oftentimes we don't necessarily take the students to the site, but we bring specialists in, someone who can talk about what they're doing from that perspective. We have several of our companies that work with our schools and new construction and renovation projects. The contractors will come in and talk about low VOC paints. They'll talk about building envelope. They'll come in and share with the students and bring in displays for them to see what's going to be happening in their building and why we're doing what we're doing. So if we can't take the students to the site, we typically kind of bring a piece of the site to the students.
Thank you, Karen. That's great. That's very encouraging. I think it's also the case that may or may not be the case in Kentucky, but in some states and certainly some provinces in Canada, there are energy companies that not only will have student centers and opportunities, for kids that do get their production facility to have tours or at least see some displays that describe the inner workings of the buildings that they cannot actually go into for security reasons or otherwise. But in addition, since they've got those facilities staffed, they also will have a bus or two that actually go and get the students, so that they can see a stream of kids coming to their centers rather than being subject to, and anticipating, in other words, that the schools themselves don't have the resources to do it. Okay, the next question. I love this question. This is an interesting one that brings back some memories, which I can describe in a minute if we have time. But the question is are you aware of school districts in Kentucky or beyond where the energy savings that the kids and the staff at that school are actually returned by the school district to the school? In other words, that the benefits, people actually get benefits that then translate into real visible benefits at their own school.
Excellent question, and one we get all the time. And my answer is it varies from district to district. We do have some districts that will rebate back to the schools a percentage of the energy savings, and that typically happens in a situation where the schools are metered in such a way that we can actually attribute the savings to that particular school. We have some situations with funding cuts that the superintendents will tell the teachers that with the energy savings, they're able to keep staff in the school, especially the specialist teachers like art, music, PE. So that does vary. One of the things that we encourage the districts to think about when they are deciding how to distribute the funding is that it be attached in some way to what the team has done, either a celebration for the students or by purchasing additional energy efficient equipment for the custodial staff, but that the reward does relate back to what the students have accomplished. There's nothing more disappointing than the students on all their hard work and the funding goes to some totally unrelated project. So we do really encourage the districts to think about that when they're thinking about how to distribute those funds and to make it connect back to what they're doing. But that does vary from district to district across the state.
Thanks, Karen. I will tell, we don't have any more questions lining up there at the moment, and folks, if you have others, please type them in. And I'm also going to come back to Sean in a few moments, who's had added some really interesting comments to the chat and works in energy education, so I want to bring him or her into the conversation in a moment. But Karen, I don't think I've ever told you the story, but in my past life, I was a high school teacher. I used to carpool out of downtown Toronto to a suburban high school opposite active nuclear reactors, so energy education was a big part of our community out there. But after a number of years, we were, a lot of the teachers at a very large high school, it was clear to us all that we had big environmental challenges both in the school and our community. And so we got together and started a bit of brainstorming. We decided in the end that one of us should go to the head secretary and find out how much we were spending on paper. This was when recycling programs were just getting started, and massive amounts of paper was being wasted at photocopiers around the school and in the school office. Anyways, the answer 20 years ago was $24,000 was the annual expenditure in this high school for fine paper. And we had brainstormed a whole bunch of ways in which we could be saving paper at that school. And as we talked about the savings, the potential, we really thought conservatively we could save about 33%, and thus generating savings of $8,000. And we went to the principal at that time and said, look, if we do this and we pitch this to the students and to the rest of the staff and everybody's on side, can we keep the money? And he said yes. And so it's a little different than energy savings, of course, which tend to be monitored by the school board, and not just the school, but the paper allocations are handled school by school. And so, yes, that gave us an opportunity to directly do what you were suggesting is the ideal, Karen. And we ourselves had envisaged that we wanted to get rid of the styrofoam in the school cafeteria and return to reusable cutlery and plates and cups. We also wanted to develop wildlife habitat on the schoolyard in a wet part of the school. And both of those things took money. So when we linked the benefits with the effort of reducing paper so as to help people see that there was a real benefit if we all worked together and collaborated and used less paper and used paper more efficiently. And it was a huge thing. We didn't actually get 33% in the first year. I was leaving teaching at that time, but we got 20%. About almost a few $1,000s that did help us start the wildlife habitat, and the efforts continued for several more years, removing and successfully removed styrofoam and throwaways from the school cafeteria. So I think it is a really valuable strategy whenever you can do it, either through water savings, through energy savings, or paper savings. The big three expenditures that all schools have around the world.
One of the things that we found, referencing one of the things you commented on, is that many times our districts they know what their utility bills are, but they have no idea what can be done about that. The folks that are paying the bills are not the people that are managing the building, so there's a real disconnect. So by engaging the students and starting this process of an assessment, it kind of brings to the table the money going out and how we're using our buildings, and provides an awareness and an education piece for the administrators. So that's another piece similar to what your paper project did. This is something similar that our students are doing on the side of the energy use.
Great, thanks, Karen. And I just want to, I mentioned Sean Reeves. He's added a couple of good comments. He works with another group that you're familiar with, Karen, I'm sure, called EnergyTeachers.org. I think that's correct. I'm not looking at it in the yes, EnergyTeachers.org, and he pointed out, as you can see, that one of the things they've developed at their website is a field trip guide that lists field trips in each state. And again, as you suggested, Karen, so that would be a great resource if you're in the United States. And you know, again, as Karen suggested, Googling your local utilities. And of course, in many states, some more than others, and in some provinces, like Ontario, more than other provinces, there is now a burgeoning renewable energy field. So it's not just the fossil fuel power plants, but there's now new hydroelectric hydropower projects. There's small-scale ones all over North America, wherever the terrain is rugged. But in addition, in fact, Karen, when I drove home from the Kentucky Environmental Ed Conference about a couple of weeks ago, I had crossed back into Canada at Detroit and was elated to see that a couple of years ago, where I had seen perhaps 200 wind turbines over a 100-mile distance east of Detroit, as I came into it, there were now well over 600 all sprawled across the landscape. So increasingly, there are renewable energy installations that people can also visit, and you know, in their own communities too. So again, it's you just have to keep asking, and if you call the nuclear company, they're going to certainly be able to, this nuclear utility, the coal-fired plant, they're going to be able to tell you too about all the other energy installations in the region that you might want to consider taking your kids to several facilities in a given day, if you can possibly manage that on a day-long field trip. Okay, one more check. I think we've answered all the questions in the back office. And Karen, I'll give you a chance to scroll a little bit through the chat room in case there's any comments you want to pick up on and respond to.
Yeah, I see one here from Sean about students who are were our need students in the past. It is interesting. We have a student right now who is working in Australia for the government and working on a wave energy project over there. We have, you know, pockets of students here and there that do come back. A lot of our students come back to the national conference that we have in June as a way to come back and report what they're doing. And what we found, too, is it's not always that they get a job in the energy industry, but their background in energy helps them get a position in whatever field they are, because they're taking that knowledge with them into the workplace, so they can come in and do kind of their personal assessment of the efficiency of the workplace and can make recommendations in that workplace for how to be more efficient and more environmentally friendly. So that's often a big plus for them as well.
That's a really great point, because you know, lots of kids get really fired up about you know, through programs like your own, Karen, and Sean's as well, become really excited about the potential to reduce energy consumption in their school and their homes and their parents' businesses and so forth. And that whole introduction really does open their eyes to potential careers, and really helps to change their interest in post-secondary education as well. So I think that's a really good point. I wanted to ask you a question, Karen. Your comment about halfway through the presentation, you talked about the energy misers that are added to vending machines, and quoted that up to 47% savings. And we did talk moments ago about kids and schools appropriating the savings that they might sometimes being able to appropriate the savings that are achieved by their efforts to be reinvested in projects and programs at their school that will be seen as real benefits and thank yous for their effort. Can you give us any other examples of perhaps individual schools that have saved considerable amounts of energy, or generally what's your experience when schools started programs like this? What's their experience in their first year, or do they do better in their second or third years? Can you give us some thoughts?
One of the things that we encourage the students to do at their schools is to use Portfolio Manager to get that baseline data, and preferably going back 2 years prior to the beginning of their project, so they have a good baseline of what their annual usage is, and then they can do a month-by-month comparison. And what we have found is the first year, it's typically just kind of getting used to the idea and doing some simple things that address specifically behaviors like turning out the lights, turning off your computer monitors, working with your tech folks to know what's appropriate in the district that can be turned off at any point in time. But just kind of some of the simple things that can make a difference. Doing that plug load study of the classroom gives the students a really good handle on, oh my goodness, we didn't realize this is how much electricity we used. Now we know how much it costs per kilowatt hour, and so this is how much it's costing our district. It's typically the second year where they really get a little bit deeper into the project. I know we have a district right now where the students have applied for a grant and they've bought LED desk lamps. But in order for a teacher to get the desk lamp, they have to go through a little student education process to understand why the students are providing them with this LED desk lamp and getting rid of the incandescent lamp on the desk. So their goal is to have all teachers in the district with LED desk lamps that the students wrote a grant for. So it's identifying an issue, and how can they make it happen. So it does vary from school to school and from district to district, and it will fluctuate over time depending on the interest of the students and the interest of the whoever's leading the team, and also the support they get from the administration. If it's something that's really supported, then there tends to be better success. So it was real interesting. The first year of our program here in Kenton County, the superintendent was super supportive, and he did a survey at the end of the first year from the teachers who were sponsoring the teams and also from the principals, and he had the principal at one of his elementary schools made the comment that having the students on this team and what they've accomplished in a year changed the culture of the school, the families in the community. And her final comment was, this was back in the days of Al Gore's being, and she said, what Al Gore failed to do, my students have done. My elementary students have changed the way we think about energy and the environment and the choices we make. So that was kind of a nice piece to hear, and it, like I said, though, it does fluctuate from year to year and does tend to get more involved as the students get more engaged.
Absolutely. Actually, I'll give you a quick if I may, a quick anecdote from up here in Ontario, where a provincial government up here a few years ago introduced a Green Energy Act, and that provides very generous subsidies, or actually pays high prices to people who invest in solar and wind primarily, but other in biomass as well. But probably 500 of the 6,000 schools in Ontario now have quite large solar arrays on their rooftops. And every time that happens, of course, there's usually a meter installed in the front hall of the school, and that allows kids to see how much is being produced. And I say how much, it's actually because what's been interesting is that it's become a springboard in a very ironic way, because kids see how little is produced by solar, and then they start. It provides a relationship with how much a contrast with how much is actually electricity is consumed in their schools. And it helps them see, in fact, that it really motivates them to really increase their efforts to promote efficiency and energy reductions and energy conservation, simply because they see how large these panel arrays are, and yet how little electricity is produced in comparison to what they're consuming. So it's been a kind of an interesting twist that.
Yes, and there are several engineering firms that are doing vital sign screens that provide that data live for the students, and so we're connecting classroom teachers, the math teachers, the science teachers, the language arts teachers to use that real-world data, and especially with our 2 net zero schools that we have here in Kentucky. They're doing all kinds of monitoring and seeing what those, like you say, how much or how little are those solar panels producing, but how does it offset what they're using in the building? So great opportunities there.
And I think your comment's a really good one, too, that it's really a springboard for not just science, but also math and language arts and art, in fact, as people do posters to help promote as part of their content efforts in a school. Well, Karen, I want to thank you very, very much for really what's been an incredibly rich presentation and wonderful responses to the questions we've had this evening. I've learned a lot, and I've already, you and I did a practice session the other day, and I learned a lot more even in the second go-around. So I guess that's a lesson to all of us that taking advantage of the archive versions is another way to learn even more than perhaps one did in the first pass through. But I really thank you for all the time you put into this and your work in need, your valuable work that you've been doing for so many years. And I want to thank everyone else who came to this presentation. I'm going to actually now go back and a questionnaire slide. I will ask all of you to take a moment to fill out the questionnaire. It's less than 2 minutes to do so. And as an incentive, as mentioned before, you'll have a chance to win a free digital subscription to Green Teacher if you do fill it in. And thank you too, Sean, for your wonderful comments in the chat box, and also the correction that pointing out that in fact the energy field trip guide that you have also refers to Canadian provinces. That's really good to know. I will mention that to Canadian teachers who ask just that question. And Karen, while people are filling out this questionnaire, again, many thanks for you for doing this. This has been wonderful.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Tim.
We might as well turn off the archive button, and I will ask people as you're doing that. Before you do that, I'll just mention